Pro-Life Waco presents an excerpt from David Bereits' Second Sunday Luncheon presentation on November 13th, 2022, titled Restoring Sexual Morality and Family Life in Post-Roe America.
So we've covered 4 of the 5 areas. I'm just going to touch on the last one and then give you a final thought to wrap up. And then we can stick around for questions as we need to, or as you have questions. But we've covered civic engagement. We've covered the ongoing presence. We've covered the effective education. Margaret did a great job of the safety net for women through pregnancy care centers, maternity ministries, providing help, walking with women and their children. And the last area is one that's going to seem a bit obscure, but something that's been very much on our heart recently, and that when I was emailing with John in preparation for coming here, interestingly, we shared that same sense of urgency, and that is the family and a healthy sexual ethic. And you may say, what's that have to do with this? Well, it has a lot to do with it, because as the family goes, so goes our community, so goes our state, so goes our nation, and so goes the world. Largely, we are in this situation of abortion because of the breakdown of family and a breakdown of understanding of God's plan for the gift that he gave us of our human sexuality. And so a few thoughts on this to realize is that we're treating a symptom. Abortion is a symptom of all of these other problems, issues, the breakdown of the family, as Margaret shared. Issues of people not, particularly young people, not understanding the proper use for the gift of sexuality. So we need to, while addressing this symptom, we need to go a little bit upstream and also address some of the cause of this. And I want to encourage you, I was thrilled to hear John talk about this upcoming session that's going to deal with chastity, the parenting and grandparenting for chastity in life, because that's how Margaret and I first got involved in pro-life work. We saw Planned Parenthood opening in Bryan College Station. We said, we don't know what to do. And somebody said, why don't you put on a chastity rally for kids and their parents? We're like, are you kidding us? And somehow God had a sense of humor, because that's what he had us do as our first steps. Before then, I left my job and took over that Coalition for Life. But if we can help young people understand how to live good, virtuous, holy relationships, for them to understand and embrace that God has given us this gift of sexuality, it's a wonderful gift, but he also gave us guardrails to show us how to use this gift in a way that is life-giving rather than a way that is detrimental to life, as Planned Parenthood exploits on a daily basis. We have wonderful resources like St. John Paul II did deep teachings on theology of the body, and I don't have enough time to go into that, but helping young people to appreciate and understand relationships and sexuality, but also that carries on into when they're seriously dating, when they're engaged for marriage, that marriage preparation, and that early time of being a young married couple. So what can each of us do? Well, those of us who are married, number one, live out your marriage in a beautiful way that radiates your love for one another and your love for Christ to the world around you. You have no idea what a powerful form of evangelization a healthy marriage and family can be. So number one, just continue to renew your marriage commitment and your family life, and also your relationships with your children. Keep building those. But then number two is find ways to encourage those who are maybe a little bit younger, a little bit further back on the road than you. You've been down the road. You've got some bruises to show that you've been down that road. Be willing to reach back, and maybe it's to mentor a young married couple, or maybe it's to help young couples in their dating, to help them live out virtuous relationships. Margaret and I never would have thought that we would do that. We thought, we're not experts. We've had lots of failings. We've made lots of mistakes. But what we found is there are young people starving for the truth. In this culture where so many young people are coming from broken homes and broken families, they're looking for examples. They want, in their heart of hearts, they want good relationships. They know that the hookup culture is devastating. They see the wreckage all around them. They're looking for truth. They're looking for real love, not the lust that is sold to them by the world. So I would just encourage you to think about all the cultural issues, whatever it is that weighs on your heart, the things that break your heart. How many of those would be solved if we had a loving, Christ-centered family in every home? I would wager that almost every one of our cultural problems, Planned Parenthood would have no business in Waco or anywhere in the United States of America were there a loving, Christ-centered family in every home. So I'd encourage you to make that a part of your pro-life efforts. And I commend John for recognizing the importance of chastity and marriage and family, because that really is upstream. And that's how we prevent people from being in a situation where Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry can prey upon them. Now, all of this that we're talking about is not easy. And you've got to weigh a lot of things, as Margaret said, to discern and find your place in this. But look at this. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. It took 49 and a half years to overturn Roe versus Wade, and now we've got more work ahead of us than that which we have behind us. So be in this for the long haul, and be in this just saying, God, where do you want me to be involved? And then as he reveals that to you, say, yes, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I'll finish with one last thought, and I'm going to take you back where I started, and I'm going to take you back to that California March for Life 2 days before the Dobbs decision. Because right as I was about to go up and give my comments at that rally, my phone in my pocket buzzed. I was like, oh, I forgot to turn on the Do Not Disturb. So I pulled it out to turn it off, and it was a slew of pictures that came in a text message. It was pictures from a woman named Yvonne Vera Montes. And Yvonne I had gotten to know as the leader of the 40 Days for Life in the east suburbs of Los Angeles, and she hadn't been able to come that day up to Sacramento. But those pictures reminded me of a number of years earlier, 12 years to be precise, when Yvonne had called me after leading 3 40 Days for Life campaigns in La Puente, California, the suburb outside of Los Angeles. And she said, David, we thought our prayers weren't being answered. We never saw any impact, but by the grace of God, the abortionist just closed up shop overnight, left town, the facility closed down. And she said, will you come out here? We're going to have a rally to thank God for answering our prayers. And so I flew out there on a plane. I had to fly back that same night. But when I got outside of that La Puente abortion facility 12 years ago, Yvonne introduced me to a young woman named Laura. And Laura was holding in her arms a tiny newborn baby she named Leah. And Laura told us that she had been going to that abortion facility when it was still open. And when she drove, her mother was driving her in. They drove past the people praying outside, like what Margaret was describing in Northern Virginia. As they drove by, Laura in the back seat, as her mom drove her in, started to cry and said, Mom, why are those people yelling at me? And her mom turned around and said, what are you talking about? They're praying silently. And Laura said, it's like they're yelling inside of my head. And her mom said, maybe that's God trying to tell you something. And through her tears, Laura realized that God was trying to tell her something. She told her mom, pull the car over. She jumped out. She ran to the people praying outside, and they took her to the local pregnancy center. And she chose life that day. And she was introducing me just a few months later to that baby outside of the now closed abortion facility, this little perfect girl named Leah. And she invited me to hold Leah. And as I held this little girl, I thought she was that close to being a statistic. What if people hadn't been praying? What if people hadn't been at the pregnancy center? What if there wasn't support for local pro-life efforts? Leah would not be alive today. And as I held her that morning, I thought this is worth everything. All the struggles, all the challenges, worth it in this moment. But I didn't realize it was not just that moment. Because over the years, Yvonne continues to send me pictures. And that day, right as I was about to speak at the California March for Life, reflecting on this would be the last March for Life before Roe would be overturned, I got pictures of a now 12-year-old Leah. She's going to school. Her mother and the father got together and ended up getting married. She has a little brother. She's a beautiful girl. And to see her grow up and to realize this is not just about the baby. It's not just about the pregnant mother. This is about children who are going to grow up and change their world. And that's why we do this as a marathon and not a sprint, is because you have an opportunity, you have an obligation to be involved in these efforts that can change hearts and minds, that can save lives, yes, today, this week, but also impact generations to come. So let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And the last thing to remind you of is this all began in Texas, through the Roe versus Wade decision and Norma McCorvey. What began in Texas will end because of Texas and because of you and because of Pro-Life Waco. God bless you.